U.S. airborne troops killed, government seals records. This is a petition to President Donald Trump and other American officials to demand the release of all government records regarding the 1985 crash of Aero Air 1285, which claimed the lives of more American servicemen than any other airplane crash in history, and an investigation by the Department of Justice and the Central Intelligence Agency into the destruction of the chartered military aircraft, a DC-8, N950JW. While the federal government said the cause of the crash was ice on the plane's wings, investigators say the findings were false, and that the plane exploded in mid-air. They say the government covered up the real reasons behind the deaths of 256 Americans, including 248 airborne troops and 8 crew members. It happened in Gander, Newfoundland on December 12, 1985. The government records for this tragic aircraft crash have been sealed for more than 30 years and are not due to be unsealed until 2055. Findings. 1. There are credible sources who support that Aero Air 1285 was deliberately destroyed by rogue intelligence operatives to prevent soldiers on the aircraft from blowing the whistle on an illegal covert mission to use a nuclear backpack, nuclear bomb, to destroy an Iraqi nuclear weapons research facility. 2. Arlie McCree, the head of the LAPD bomb squad, connected the crash to the CIA and reported his findings to the federal government. Within 1 month, McCree and Officer Ron Ball, his partner, were killed in a booby-trapped pipe bomb. 3. A patsy, North Hollywood makeup artist Donald Lee Morse, who was African American, and had no history of bomb expertise or involvement, was convicted of their murders. Morse later would reportedly commit suicide in prison, which rested conveniently with those he said were actually guilty of the crime he was convicted of. Retired LAPD Detective Captain Robert Michael reported in February 2017 that the deaths of McCree and Ball were linked to the Gander crash. Under international law, the Canadian government was responsible for determining the cause of the crash. The Canadian Air Safety Board, CASB, in a 5-4 split decision ruled in 1988 that icing was the cause of the crash. 6. The facts support that icing was not the cause. The Gander Airport meteorologist reported no precipitation while the aircraft was on the ground. The ground crew who had their hands on the aircraft reported no ice. The 4 professionals on the CASB agreed that fire and explosion on the airborne DC-8 were the probable cause of the crash. Witnesses reported fire on the aircraft on takeoff. 7. Dr. Cyril Wecht, internationally recognized pathologist and attorney, examined toxicological profiles on file with the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, AFIP. Finding carbon monoxide levels in several dozen individuals greater than 70%. These were lethal levels. Dr. Wecht opined that fire on the airborne aircraft had to be responsible for the high levels of carbon monoxide since no individual could have survived ground impact. 8. Investigators close to the case say the aircraft was remotely blown up on takeoff, and that the motive was to prevent those on the aircraft from blowing the whistle on an illegal covert mission. 9. The U.S. Army disputed the possibility of sabotage. No terrorist or criminal investigation was launched by either the Federal Bureau of Investigation or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. 10. There was no reconstruction of aircraft debris to determine the cause of the crash, and a push by the U.S. Army for quick burial of aircraft debris. 11. Yuval Aviv, also known as Yuval Aviv, is an Israeli-American security consultant and a Fox TV consultant. He testified in a videotaped interview with KDKA-TV's Terry Taylor, in Pittsburgh, that he had witnessed an intelligence agency helicopter landing at Gander while Aero Air 1285 was refueling. Aviv says 4 men with government credentials from the helicopter loaded a crate into the cargo hold of the aircraft. He further reported there were bodies of dead commandos in sealed wooden boxes loaded on the aircraft in Cairo. To make room for the wooden boxes, Lieutenant Colonel Marvin Jeffcoat, Commander, 3rd Battalion, 502nd Infantry, ordered the removal of 41 duffel bags. The duffel bags were left at the Cairo airport. 12. Aero Air's Captain Arthur Shoppaul observed, possibly 4 wooden boxes loaded in the cargo compartment. He guessed their weight at 160 pounds, and it took 2 men to load them into the cargo hold. Shoppaul guessed the dimensions were about the size of a coffin. There was no manifest for the wooden boxes. The U.S. Army later reported the wooden boxes contained aircraft parts for Aero Air. The airline denied it. 13. U.S. Army Captain Gerald DePorter was the U.S. Customs supervisor on this flight. He was able to inspect the unit's equipment in the Sinai in December 1985. He then rode with the sealed trucks from the Sinai to Cairo. Captain DePorter was denied a ramp pass to inspect the wooden boxes and other materials loaded on the aircraft in Cairo. 14. 2 Egypt Air 737s carried a total of 242 troops from Ras Nasrani to Cairo. The Army revised the count down to 248 passengers, but Aero Air testified there were 250 passengers. Regarding the conflict in the exact number of passengers aboard the ill-fated flight, Dr. Les Philitas, member of the Canadian Air Safety Board and author of the book, Improbable Cause, Deceit and Dissent in the Investigation of America's Worst Air Disaster, could not find any documentation on the transport of the additional men. 15. One box, fitting the size of a backpack nuke, had been carried from the Sinai on board one of the Egypt Air 737s. The B-54 Special Atomic Demolition Munition, or SADM, is a backpack nuke weighing in at approximately 58 pounds. Investigators say this may have been the box carried to Cairo on the 737. 16. At Gander, a fire burning 50 feet into the ground supports the destruction of a nuclear core from a special atomic demolition munition. Also, an American explosive ordnance team, at Gander were ordered to wear their dosimeter badges, which are used to detect radiation levels. And Canadian firemen suffered the effects of radiation exposure, not something associated with the crash of a DC-8-63CF. 17. Sergeant Todd Jennings, age 20, a member of the 3rd Battalion, 502nd Infantry, who was killed in the crash, wrote a poem to his mother where he cited the otherwise unknown top-secret terms, Lucifer Directive and Omega Deception. A Lucifer Directive was an order to deploy a weapon of mass destruction, clearly a nuclear bomb. While Omega Deception meant to shift the blame away from those who actually used it. Those responsible for these murders need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. More American military members were killed in this incident than any aircraft crash in history. It is a story that the American public deserves the right to know. The information needed for a criminal investigation has been sealed for more than 70 years by the U.S. government. Justice demands that there is no place to hide for those involved in homicide. The families of these American heroes deserve to know what happened December 12, 1985 in Gander.